Hello, everyone. Welcome to CMPD podcast. Excuse me, CopCast. Look at this. I can't even get it right on the first try.
Right out of the
I
gate.
know,
Right out of the
right?
gate.
Look at this. I'm Jolie Ortiz.
Brandon Miller with Crime Stoppers.
Rob Tofano with the communications office, in for the incomparable Captain Koch.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, we'll have a story about that in just a couple of seconds.
Those are some big
He's going to come
shoes.
flying in here like he was shot out of a cannon in the next couple of minutes, so just be forewarned.
Those are some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, and speaking of big shoes, we've got a guest with some pretty big shoes that we're going to meet in just a little while, but I'll introduce now Lieutenant Steve Huber.
Oh, yes.
Talk about active survival training, which is obviously on the front burner for good reason the past couple of days with Dayton and El Paso, and we want to unpack that somewhat with him in just a little bit through the Captain's Corner in an interview. So I didn't mean to get in your way there, Jolie.
Way to go,
On a
Rob.
mission.
He's just taking everything over. But it's okay. We still love you. Maybe. Anyways, so let's start a little bit with...
Yeah.
Such a bad idea.
Speak
I
for
know.
yourself.
Oh, wow. Those are fighting
Oh,
words
I
over
love Rob. He
there.
knows
You
that.
know, right?
He
Brandon and I
knows
go
Rob.
right
I
back.
love Rob.
So tell them about us. Tell them about the team, the Teamcast, and the CopCast, and what we intend to do for a half hour every week, Jolie.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about the life of a police officer, things that are happening in our community, and a little bit of events that are happening in our community that we really need to kind of chat about. Serious topics, also interesting topics, things that we really want to hear from. You would want to hear from a police officer, and also we want you guys to also send us stuff in so we know what's kind of trending out there, so we can continue this conversation about police and our community and what police officers can do to be better part of our community.
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail right on the head. I think that we're just resolute with this podcast in trying to show a less formal side of policing,
Definitely.
right? A more relatable side, dare I say human side, and I think that's, if we could land in that neighborhood, then mission accomplished.
Again, so we're asking, if you guys have something that you want us to discuss or something that is on your mind, we're asking people to email us at cmpdcopcast cmpdcopcast@cmpd.org. Sorry, it's a new thing for me. I'm still trying to remember my own email address.
You never know. The guy's got a voice like silk, right? Like,
I know.
like fog.
I've already said,
Thank you,
if you're
Rob.
not listening in for the topics, you got to just listen in to Detective Miller's
you
voice.
guys.
That's the only reason why I came.
I mean,
I
that's
knew that there was
huge.
Cold Water and Detective Miller. Otherwise,
I mean,
it
that
would've been a
voice
no-show.
can win everybody over.
And usually does.
Moving on to our topics.
Oh, listen! Oh, now all of a sudden,
Oh, he's
now-
getting
now
all
all of a sudden he's-
flustered.
Yeah. Oh, now he's getting a fluster. Brandon, completely out of character.
Oh,
Disappointed.
Oh.
Really disappointed.
It's okay.
Right.
But
What
anyway.
what would your public think?
It's all right.
You get them a little
It's
flustered
all right.
more. But anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about, like you said, we're talking about active survival training. But before we get there, Brandon, I want to know what you ate this morning. Just to throw you off a little
That was
bit.
very awkward. Well, I actually had a protein shake
Is that
for
all
breakfast.
Is that all you
I'm
had?
on this whole health kick thing. I'm trying to lose a little bit of weight now that I'm not playing football anymore. So I start my day with a shake every morning, and then lunch kind of is up in the air.
Yeah, and if no one's had the opportunity to get a glimpse of
Here we go.
this specimen that is Brandon Miller,
Here we
I
go.
urge you quickly
Listen.
to race to the Crime Stoppers Facebook page
my
to get
goodness.
a really good glimpse of this. This is impressive, if nothing else.
Is this
Ladies.
CMPD CopCast or is this a
Hit on.
CopCast about Brandon?
Hit on
No.
Detective Brandon
This
Miller.
is not what we're
Listen,
doing
so
today,
shy,
Rob.
Brandon.
This is not what we're
We
doing
call
today.
Detective Miller in the office Officer Fine.
Goodness.
Oh, is that what? Yeah,
Yes.
and I see some of the comments coming on social media. It's
No.
not unique to us. It
It's
looks
not.
like he's got quite a
He's got a
following out
following.
there in the social
Again,
media world.
This is not the regularly scheduled programming today.
Hey, all kidding aside, I think Jolie hit it on the head. Brandon, what, 11 years?
It'll be
12 years?
10 years next month, actually.
Yeah. Did you ever envision, you start off as a hard charging street cop, 10 years ago, that you'd find yourself sitting at a podcast table on television a number of times a week, amplifying the message of Crime Stoppers? Kind of a departure from where you started.
I had no idea my career would take me to where it is now. I was happy in my division. I knew my area. I love my community. But with anything, if you do it for so long, you may want to change off a little bit. And so here I am. I love what I do. I love serving the community in this aspect, and also being one of the many faces of CMPD that gets represented and put out into the in front of the public's eye.
Yeah, just for those of you who don't know Brandon, we tease him a lot. He's very, very visible. Every week he's on WBTV. And by the way, elephant in the room, BTV's in the room.
Yes.
Right? We do
WBTV.
have, WBTV in the
Shout
room.
out to
Alex
WBTV.
Giles, just a tremendous journalist from WBTV/anchor.
We just finished filming with him
Right.
for a segment they're going to air.
Yeah, they are just kind of doing the voyeur thing here, looking in and
just asked
capturing this
him-
today with his videographer, Jordan.
I just asked him that when he airs it to let me know so I can send it to my mom.
Yeah, like she wants to see this.
But what? She is my number one fan, okay?
Right.
Yeah,
Poor thing had
she's
to
supposed to
spend
be.
decades raising you. She wants to see more of you. I'm sure. Yeah, that's
Exactly.
exactly what she signed up
No,
for.
you know what she told Brandon once? She met him once and goes, "You need an agent? I got you."
Yep.
Your
Yeah,
mom likes you?
my mom.
Brandon, did you
Mom
just
loves
put that-
me.
My,
actually.
for some
spell on
reason.
people.
I know. I'm telling you, Officer Fine over here just puts everybody into like, yes,
go.
we want him.
It's almost like
here we go.
hypnotizing. This thing that
Again,
he's
this
got
is
going.
not this is not a podcast about me. This is about issues
Really?
within the community.
Sure.
I know. We just started like this today, and we got to keep teasing you. I'm sorry, but
On a more somber note, you mentioned the
Yes.
obviously just tragic news coming out of Texas and Ohio, and I think that's where you started this week, Joey. I suspect you spent, I know you're a news junkie like me, spent a good portion of your weekend glued to the TV watching some of that unfold.
so I try not to. After I got out of journalism, I kind of needed just to get away from it. But I did see the news, and I did see a lot of it. And for me, it's always, how do we get to this point that this continues to happen and happen and happen? And what can we do? What really feasibly can we actually do to stop something like this? Because yes, we have rights to have guns, and then there's a topic of mental health everybody wants to talk about. And for me, it's always like, well, think about the civil rights movement. Did everybody back then have mental health problems when they were, attacking blacks who were trying to get just a right to vote? Things like that, simple things like that. And it's a very complicated topic. It's not an easy thing to talk about, and it's not always easy to just say your opinion without somebody else telling you that you're wrong.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's so funny you bring that up. That was a good observation, because I kind of have the same vibe. And I know it's no barometer, scientific barometer, but just look at the social media.
Yeah.
The rhetoric back and forth. People that you've been friends with your whole life, in these circles that you run with, and the way that they're going after each other just because of a difference of opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And I get it, man. This is serious, heavy, grave subject matter that we're talking about here. And I think to dovetail off what you said, there's probably not a simple answer to it. Right?
There really
not.
isn't. There really isn't. I mean, for me as a civilian, I'm not a police officer, so I don't think I ever am going to be in a situation where I'm going to be in danger, or I walk to a mall and I think I'm perfectly fine. I grew up. My dad was a cop, so I grew up with like situational awareness and being sure and looking at things, and making sure that I'm aware of my surroundings and just make sure that I'm in the right position. Even like walk, and I'm also a woman and I have to deal with these things too. Like if I walk at night to a car, I gotta keep my eyes open, and I carry my keys in my hands in case I need to stab somebody. I know that sounds terrible.
No, it doesn't sound
but these are
terrible.
things that I have to think about. I know it sounds, but for you guys as a police officers, and you're a former NYPD officer, Rob.
One of the best police departments
one
in
of
the
the best
world.
police
I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just saying. Best town in the world. best
Have you
police
guys ever been in a situation like that where you feel like you're not coming back?
Well, as an officer, that thought, probably, especially when I was on the street, that thought, I don't want to say it went through my head every day, but the possibility of knowing that there may be a chance that I don't get to see my family. This may be the last time I see my family once I leave that door in the morning or before my shift. It's something that I guess a lot of people can hear it said, but they don't necessarily realize that, hey, I may work at an insurance company, I may work at a bank, but something may happen to me and I may not see my family ever again. They may not see me. So it's definitely a hard-hitting feeling if an officer or anybody in that position, it happens to find themselves in a situation like that. For me as an officer, when I hear of a mass shooting, there's so many things that go through my head. If an officer's going to be targeted, if they get there soon enough and the suspect is still shooting, I think about the family members that are affected. I think about the people who work wherever this particular thing happens at. There's a lot of things that go through my mind as an officer when these type of things happen.
Brandon, I know you've got little ones. You have 2 boys?
I have 2 boys and a little girl.
So you've got 3 children.
Yes.
How, I remember my years back on the job when I was with NYPD. I really worked hard to kind of insulate my wife to the day in and day out activity that was developing. Just, I don't want to say put them in bubble wrap, but you just don't. It's bad enough you're
You kind of have to, though,
manage
to
it
be able to.
sometimes. How do you manage that at home with the children? Do they know the level or the extent of potential danger that you're confronted with and officers are?
Well, obviously they watch the news. They watch shows that where they see officers are getting hurt or even killed. So they're aware of the possibility. For me as a parent, what I try to do is I try to sit them down and explain to them what's going on and to say, hey, I know it looks bad and it is bad. But for me, I try to explain to them that, hey, Daddy's going to do whatever he has to do to make sure he makes it home back to you guys. Because, again, I'm only an officer for a few hours a day, but I'm always going to be a dad.
Absolutely. Amen.
That's one of the sad things, too, is the fact that we have these mass shootings and we have to find ways to talk to our children about what's happening. How do you tell maybe ages 5 and below, hey, there's somebody out there killing people because he just doesn't like them, or kids that are in elementary school. One of the stories I remember as a reporter was Sandy Hook up in Connecticut, and elementary kids who have absolutely no reason.
Innocent babies.
Innocent children.
And you'd love to really preserve that innocence and let them grow up slowly and
but
with
you
a slow
can't
burn.
now.
Of course not. And that's sad.
And
in a perfect world you would be. You know?
And I wish it was like that. I wish you can just grow up and frolic through, the land and the flowers and have fun or whatever you want to call it.
And
I
not
have this
have a care in the
really
world.
conjuring up an image of
I'm trying to
Jolie
give
kind
you
of frolicking through the.
I don't frolic. I'm saying children
This
do.
much we know.
She's not a frolic.
Very little. I'm certain of that, but I could pretty much.
So this is one of the things that I
frolicking.
did find out before we came here. There's been just this year alone in 2019, since January, there's been over 250 mass shootings.
And numbers. You can do a lot with numbers.
In the pens,
if you speak with others, and you dig a little bit deeper, they say, well,
It's
that's the gun lobby. That's kind of they're kind of escalating those numbers for political reasons. You have others who on the other side that want to diminish the number of.
Exactly.
Number of incidents that occur. So I think numbers you can do anything with.
You
them.
can
Just
do it
take them with a
exactly,
grain of salt.
and a couple of those that I've seen that were under those were kind of shootings that were. I think we had a recent shooting in Uptown that was more than 4 people who were injured in Uptown, but not people have passed away. So maybe media doesn't consider that as a mass shooting, but somebody else would consider it as a mass shooting, and that was one of the ones that popped up. Obviously, UNC Charlotte, that was huge news here in our community, and it's kind of that's another question that people are having, trying to figure out what really considers a mass shooting. So with that being said, we do have a special guest.
Oh, I'm not saying this because he's 2 times the size of me.
Oh my God.
3 times as smart as me, and that's probably an understatement.
Yes.
But well, Brent, you don't have to agree.
Well, Rob, you're not the biggest man. You're not.
No, all right. Well, that okay,
there you
granted.
go.
But on the intellect end, could you give me a little bit?
It's all right.
I don't know, Rob.
This is, I knew this was a bad
We're
idea when we started.
attacking you.
Yeah.
I was telling Steve in the green room. I guess it's a green room. Maybe it's a blue room with kind of chip paint on it. Before we got rock and rolling today, that I have listened to the pontificators and the alleged experts and the pros on active survival, and they get up there and they filibuster and do whatever it is they do on the cable network programs. I could sit here unequivocally, and I think you guys have heard him too, without any hesitation and say the guy that I'm about to introduce is the foremost expert on active survival shooting. And not only that, but the way that he has the ability to communicate in everyday people terms, so it really has impact on all of us. It's nothing short of impressive. Lieutenant Steve Huber. And I will say this before we go on. I know I'm filling in big shoes for Captain Koch today in the Captain's Corner. I don't want this to just be a you and I thing, Steve and I think. Maybe if you guys want to weigh in too. But first of all, thank you. Thanks. I know how much your time is in demand. I know that you do these presentations, these active survival training presentations quite frequently. So for us to get 15 minutes of your time is just it's a godsend.
He's a very busy person.
Oh my gosh.
I usually call them and they have, well, we're over here doing this 2-hour presentation. We're over here someplace else. You guys have one coming up, a big one in September that we have put out on our social media accounts. September 4th. You're going to be doing a lot of these. And what people don't know about is that we don't post these just because, a mass shooting happened.
What
We
would you do?
post
How many
this.
have you done so far? There's 129? About 129 presentations so far this year?
This year, probably close. Yeah.
129 presentations. I saw some of your, I think we follow each other on social. So some of you had this heartfelt message. I mean, gosh, it was goosebump kind of stuff that went out on Facebook the other night. Really kind of putting in context what the week's been like for you and from a position that you're in. How would you see something like what happened over the weekend? What are your thoughts, Steve?
Well, the biggest thing, Rob, that I want people to get the message about is that you've got to stop being surprised. Okay? We have got to get into a position as a country, as a nation, where we stop saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe this just happened. We've had multiple cases where people have been killed. I can think of, 13 at Columbine, 32 at Virginia Tech, 27 at Sandy Hook. 49 at Club Pulse, 58 in Las Vegas, 26 in Southern Springs, Texas, and then this weekend, 22 in El Paso, 9 in Dayton. It keeps happening. And what happens, what my biggest fear is, Rob, is that we reset ourselves. We have something like this weekend, we get all upset about it, we start talking about it, and then all of a sudden we put it on the shelf and we put it away. And we start going on to other things in our lives, and then the next thing you know, we get hit with another event, and we're shocked again. Mm-hmm. We've got to stop being shocked. And part of my message on Facebook was, we have to be prepared. Every single person in this nation has to be prepared for what they would do in an active shooting because, and what we're seeing in the statistics, as she mentioned earlier, these are continuing to rise. And when you look at what's already happened this year that's going to be qualified as a active shooting or a mass casualty event, you're going to see that we are on record pace right now. We're just almost halfway through August, and look what's already happened in our nation. So that's my message is people have got to stop being shocked by it, and they have to start training themselves and getting themselves prepared for something we hope never happens.
So the people that go to your active survival training, what do they tell you? What do they tell you when they come to these events? Because you're saying that they're shocked, but they're still coming to these events. So obviously something is kind of sparking in their brain to come, or are they just coming because, well, I have no other option?
Well, one of the things that's happening is less than 1% of all businesses conduct any form of active survival training. Less than 1%.
Wow.
Most active survival training is conducted with first responders, police, fire, and medic, the military, all colleges since Virginia Tech. But now you have some non-traditional groups that we didn't associate with it, like houses of worship are starting to come around. Mm-hmm. Healthcare facilities are starting to come around. Other types of schools are starting to come around. Because what's happening is people are starting to understand that this is not stopping. And the problem is that every time we think there's a location where this can't happen, it seems to happen there. Right. And what a lot of people don't even realize is this is the second Walmart to have a mass shooting. And a lot of people don't realize that. When I tell them that fact, they're like, what? Because they don't realize that in the other active shooting in a Walmart, 3 people died. And it didn't resonate because it didn't get the same attention.
It just doesn't have the big
El Paso
numbers.
Did.
Right.
And that's what happens. And I tell people this in our class, if UNCC had happened in California, my question to you would be, would we have even heard about it?
That's
2 people. 2 people died.
Because it's all about scale.
It's about scale, and it's about attention, and it's about what else is happening in the nation at that point in time.
And it's
what's
that
going on
argument
in China,
of
Iran.
what is a mass shooting as well,
Yeah.
and how many people does a mass shooting mean?
Can I define them?
Yeah, go
Yeah,
for
I was
it.
just going to ask you that. So
Okay.
for folks out there that don't know exactly what a mass casualty consists of, could you give us a little bit of insight on that?
Yes. An active shooter as a term came out after Columbine in 1999. The nation was shocked, as we are right now, what happened this weekend. Nation was shocked. The FBI, Department of Homeland Security, local, national law enforcement all got together and started looking at Columbine, trying to figure out what was this, what just happened. And as they looked at Columbine, one of the things they realized is that the shooters were actively shooting throughout the school. So they came up, that's where they coined the term active shooter. Well, then as they were looking at Columbine trying to define it, somebody said, hey, maybe we can't define it just based on Columbine. Maybe we need to look back in United States history and see if there were other mass casualty criminal events that fit the same criteria. So they found them. Back in 1966, the Texas Clock Tower shooting, in the 80s, in the Postal Service. So what they did is they looked at all of those previous events, Columbine, and they looked and they found one common denominator. And this is the definition of an active shooter. An active shooter is somebody whose mission is to kill as many people as they possibly can. That is it. That is the definition of an active shooter. Active survival came about because the Department of Homeland Security, looking at Columbine, said people in that school did not know what to do based on the event that they were experiencing. So they came out with the first true active survival program. And what you've seen as a result of our program and other programs since is a lot of groups have taken that program that originally came out and have modified it and changed it based on the new tactics that these suspects are using.
What are you seeing? You talk about the programs, these presentations, and there's a lot of them. I would sure it runs the gamut. The kind of people, men, women, black, white, blue, green, all kinds of religious denominations. What's the common thread, though? What are you hearing from people? What's prompting them? Is it fear?
A lot of what we're seeing, Rob, honestly, is coming from the attention, the media attention. We do have several businesses in Charlotte that have been using us for the entire 3.5 years that I've been teaching. We meet with them quarterly, a little bit more. But what happens is, like when Sutherland Springs, Texas happened at that church in Texas, all of a sudden we got inundated by houses of worship that started finally looking at their own safety and
because
security.
who in their right mind would ever thought that somebody would have the temerity to walk into a church and start shooting parishioners?
And that's what's happened now after this weekend is we have people who've already scheduled classes who are now calling us wanting to move their class up because of what happened. And now we get about 25 emails a day, probably more now, of people asking us for this program.
People are tuning in, and I want to make the most of your time, make the most of their time, and I know that there's hours, if not days, of training that you really commit to developing community members who go through this really intense stuff. We don't have hours and days. So nutshell it for us, some of the bigger takeaways that people should know when they're tuning into this CopCast right now, actionable things that they could do to protect themselves.
All right, several things. It's everybody's responsibility to train. It is not your employer's responsibility to train you. You have to train. You have to go online. You have to go to podcasts, webinars, whatever it is. Some of these self-defense classes and gyms, you have to train yourself. You have to be prepared. You cannot rely on somebody else to train you. Some of the key takeaways from our presentation I'd like to get out real quick. First of all, hiding alone gets you killed. You cannot simply hide. You have got to do more. You've got to put a barricade between you and that suspect if you can't get out of the environment. But, lock a door, block a door, tie off a door, put things in front of the door. But the ideal situation would be for you to get out. If you can get out, a moving target, a target moving away from you is a hard target to hit. You've got to keep moving. And that El Paso Walmart, that was a super Walmart. The thing was huge. There was 3,000 people in it. Think about a Walmart and think about if you keep moving towards the back or to another non-traditional exit. And that's something else I want people to remember. There are non-traditional exits that you don't think about in every building, through a kitchen in a restaurant, through the back of a Walmart, through loading docks of businesses.
A window, some way
window.
to get out.
You've got to think about these non-traditional exits because a lot of people lock themselves in on the exit that they came in. So movement and distance, you have to keep moving. Get yourself out of that environment. If you're trapped and you can't get out, at that point, you have to barricade yourself.
You got more. I know you've got more.
Yeah, I got more. Some other things that you have to do is you have to control yourself. You have to control your own breathing.
Right.
You have to control your own emotion. One of the things that happens in these situations is people get overwhelmed from the shock of it.
Well, I mean, you can't blame them.
Exactly.
Perpetrated.
But what soldiers and police officers do is they learn to control their breathing so that when they get into that shocking situation, they keep their brain in the game. They keep that breathing regulated because if you don't breathe and you get overwhelmed and shocked, what happens is your body takes over.
Yeah.
And when your body takes over, it goes into freeze mode where all of the blood is being pulled from all of your extremities, including your head and neck, and it's being pulled by your body into the heart to protect it. That's a basic survival instinct of the human body.
Oh, wow. I've never
You've got to
thought
keep
about that.
breathing going. Otherwise, you can run yourself into that freeze.
And I would suspect that's something you have to develop. That's just not something you're going to learn on the fly.
5 minutes a day of breathing would help you with that. But I got one more point I got to hit. Guys, there's about 40% of people that think it's fireworks when they hear it. They think, oh, it's fireworks, and sometimes they even walk to it to see what's going on. What you have to understand, if you hear something in a location that sounds like fireworks, but it's a location where you know there should not be fireworks, you have got to react as if it's gunfire.
Yes.
You have got to get out. If you get out of the building and it turns out it was somehow fireworks in the Walmart, then you got yourself some free training. Congratulations, you did the right thing.
Right.
But the people that stay behind and say, oh, that's fireworks, and blow it off, those people end up getting caught up in these things.
One of the last things that, and I think that there was a lot of misinformation being perpetuated for years in that just play dead, hope they go away. If you exhaust all those other tips that you just expressed or communicated a couple of seconds ago, and you got nothing left, you got to fight.
You fight. You're exactly right, Rob. You if you can get out, you get out. If you can't, you barricade. And then if you have to fight for your life, you fight for your life. You never stop fighting for your life.
That's right. That's one thing that we always, as police officers, we kind of train to do as well. That whole fight or flight scenario, like Lieutenant Huber said, even in other situations, that information could be used in any other situation. If you feel yourself in a situation where you need to get out, get out. But if you have to fight, like he said, fight for your life, because you are literally fighting for your life.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a last resort. You can't find those untraditional kind of ways of exits of getting out. You can't be a moving target. You are there with the perpetrator. This is a last resort.
And you
take them on.
You attack them from the neck up.
Yep.
That's where most people are vulnerable, from the neck up. And I have to give a shout out to Riley Howell at UNCC.
Yes, definitely.
I have to.
Definitely.
Because by tackling that suspect, and even though he was mortally wounded, he hit that suspect so hard that the suspect fell to the ground holding his ribs and dropped his gun. They estimate that Riley Howell's action saved at least 20 other lives.
His bravery.
Sometimes the simplest thing that you can do could have the biggest impact. These are not trained killers in most cases.
Right.
There's some wingnut who went and got a weapon and got mad about something and went out there. They're not trained killers. Put them under circumstances that put them in duress, make them have to think, slow their actions down, and you never know, it could cause you to survive the situation.
We had with my husband, and we walked in and saw some guy. I don't know what it was, but we heard him say some sort of joke. I think he was trying to joke, something along the lines. It's like, oh, I'm just going to come here and put a bomb. And my husband and I looked at each other and we said, no, you're not. And we went, got security and escorted the guy out. And he was pissed about it. We went in and we pretty much had a moment where, like, this is not something to joke around anymore. I don't care how angry you are or if you're, tweeting at somebody or anything like that. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be saying that, oh, I'm going to come in here and blow this place up, or I'm going to come here and shoot into things. But, that was one situation we were in, and we decided to take action because we just didn't want anybody else to get hurt.
Well, can I add one thing to that real quick? There's a saying that's it's see something, say something. Everybody has that responsibility. If you see something that is suspicious out there, you have got to report it. They had a grandmother, I can't remember the state, who turned in her grandson because of some interesting, weird things he was doing in the house. The FBI raided the house, and they found multiple assault rifles. They found a plan. This guy was an active shooter who was getting ready to attack within the week.
Wow.
And that grandmother, by turning him in, saved who knows how many lives.
I know you study this. This is your thing. Rarely do these things happen in a vacuum. Quite frequently, there are some signs along the way, are there not?
There are signs, and the other thing, Rob, unfortunately, is they are copycatting each other.
Yes.
They look at each other. They study police tactics. That's why we continue to see them. They continue to get worse because what they're doing is they're studying each other, and it's like the El Paso killer. He went to a location where he knew he could find the most victims, drove 600 miles to do that. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're trying to kill as many people as they possibly can.
Talk about some of the upcoming events. I don't want to put you on the spot with dates or times or locations or anything else like that. You've got events coming up, though.
We have a workshop coming up on September the 4th. We're working with UNCC right now to do a program for them. We're working with Johnson C. Smith to do a program with them. And I say program, it's as many programs as they need is basically what we're willing to do to help them. We're just trying to get the information out, but unfortunately, there's 3 instructors right now for CMPD, and as you can also imagine, we are slammed, and it's tough. Yeah. It's tough because we're trying to get the word out, and we're trying to get the message out, but a lot of times, and I include the city of Charlotte, sometimes we come and do the city of Charlotte, and we don't have a packed room. We're trying to get as many people into these classes as we possibly can.
I don't think I've ever, been impressed with you for years, your presentations, the information you release on this kind of thing. Why'd you get? I know you left the department. You came back as a higher back. Did you not? What? This isn't a passion. This is an obsession of yours, and why? Why get into this area?
Becoming a police officer was a calling, Rob. And when I got close to retiring, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I went and was talking to Deputy Chief Foster about options. And she said, hey, we got this new class that was just created by one of our officers in the department. Would you be interested in teaching? You have 10 years on SWAT, some special skills, dealt with the North Lake Mall shooting, which was not an active shooting. We think you'd be good at this. And what I have found, basically, Rob, is I found my second calling. So that's why I'm here.
Well, you found the
Nice.
right one, that's for sure, my brother.
Definitely.
We appreciate your time, Steve. Godspeed and keep doing the people's work. It's important, it's impactful, and it's saving lives, no doubt.
Well, guys, that's all we got for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, we want to hear from you guys, and you can email us at
Hopefully I get this right.
Come on now, man.
CMPD CopCast at cmPD.org. Did I get it?
I'm going to go with that. I'm going with yes.
Round of
Jolie's not kicking you under the
applause.
table,
I
so
know.
that's certainly a good indication that you may have gotten it right.
He got it right.
Appreciate you guys indulging me and let me fill in for the good captain, and we'll see you the next go round.
Bye, guys. Hope to see you soon.